You followed the plan. You got the job, you paid the bills, you built something, and somewhere in the middle of all of it, you started feeling nothing. Not sad, not angry, just flat. Like you're watching your own life through glass. Here's what nobody told you. That feeling has a name. It has a mechanism. And the fact that it's happening to you while you're doing everything right is not a coincidence. It's a design flaw, not in you, in the way you were taught to build a life. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly what's happening inside your brain when meaning disappears, and why the standard fixes make it worse. There's a term psychologists use that almost nobody outside of research circles has heard. It's called the Arrival Fallacy. Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar at Harvard first put language to it. The idea is straightforward. You set a goal. You chase it. And the entire time you're chasing it, you believe, genuinely believe, that reaching it will change how you feel. Then you reach it. And after about 72 hours, you feel exactly the same as before. That 72-hour number isn't random. Research on major life achievements, promotions, graduations, even lottery wins, consistently shows the emotional high lasts between 2 and 4 days. Then baseline. But here's what makes this more than just a quirk of human psychology. Your brain has a system called the dopamine reward circuit, and it was never designed to make you feel satisfied. It was designed to make you pursue. The anticipation of a reward releases dopamine. The reward itself? Almost nothing. Which means the brain you're living in is biologically optimized for the chase, not the arrival. You were never supposed to feel content at the finish line. The finish line was only ever a tool to keep you moving. A 2001 study at Emory University showed that when monkeys received an expected reward, their dopamine levels barely moved. But when they anticipated a reward, when they thought it was coming, dopamine surged up to 400% above baseline. 400%. Your brain is running the same system, and nobody told you. But the arrival fallacy is only part of this, because some of you listening have already figured that out. You've stopped chasing big goals. You've simplified. You've tried gratitude. You've tried mindfulness, and it still didn't work. There's a reason for that too. And it's the part of this story that most psychology content never gets to. There's one mechanism at the core of this, one specific process happening in your brain right now, that explains why almost every conventional approach to meaning fails. Not because the advice is wrong, because it's aimed at the wrong target. Hold that. In 1978, two psychologists, Philip Brickman and Donald Campbell, published a paper that quietly changed how researchers think about human happiness. They studied 3 groups of people: lottery winners, car accident victims who had become paraplegic, and ordinary people living ordinary lives. The results were not what anyone expected. Within a year, the lottery winners reported almost identical happiness levels to the control group. The paraplegic group, the people who had lost the use of their legs, also returned to near their original happiness baseline. Brickman and Campbell called this hedonic adaptation. The idea is this: your emotional state has a set point, and your brain, regardless of what happens to you, good or bad, will pull you back to that set point within months. Think about that. Not years. Months. The promotion you've been working toward for 3 years? Your brain will absorb it and return you to baseline inside of 6 months, possibly sooner. This is not pessimism. This is a documented, replicated finding across decades of research. And it means that the entire framework most people are using to find meaning, achieve something, feel better, repeat, is built on a process the brain actively dismantles. Every time you hit a milestone, your brain recalibrates. The new job becomes the normal job. The new house becomes just the house. The relationship that once made you feel everything slowly becomes the background of your life. It doesn't mean those things weren't real. It means your brain moved the goalpost. Again, here's what nobody asks. If adaptation is inevitable, what actually works? Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist. In 1942, he was arrested and sent to Auschwitz. He survived 4 concentration camps, and what he observed, in himself and in the people around him, fundamentally changed how psychology thinks about the human mind under extreme conditions. The people who survived, Frankl noticed, were not always the physically strongest. They were the ones who had a reason, a specific reason, a person waiting for them, a work unfinished, a question they still needed to answer. Frankl published his observations in 1946. The book, Man's Search for Meaning, has sold over 16 million copies. But here's the part that gets lost in every summary of his work. Frankl made a sharp distinction between happiness and meaning. Happiness, he argued, is a byproduct. You cannot pursue it directly. The moment you make happiness the goal, it becomes a moving target. Meaning is different. Meaning is found in 3 specific places according to Frankl's research. In the work you do, in the love you give, and in the way you respond to suffering you cannot avoid. Notice what's not on that list: achievement, status, comfort, security. The things that modern culture tells you will make life feel worthwhile are absent from the list of things that actually do. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but I do have meaningful work. I do love people. So why does it still feel flat? That's the right question. And it leads to the piece of this that almost nobody talks about. In physics, entropy is the tendency of systems to move from order to disorder over time. Psychologists have begun applying a version of this concept to the human mind. Dr. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the researcher behind the concept of flow, spent decades studying what makes people feel fully alive in their own experience. His finding was counterintuitive. Meaning is not a state you reach. It's a state you maintain through active effort, constantly. The moment you stop investing in meaning, it decays. Not dramatically, not all at once, gradually, like a signal losing strength. And here's where it gets specific. Csikszentmihalyi found that people report the highest levels of meaning not during rest, not during reward, but during what he called flow states, moments of complete absorption in a task that is exactly difficult enough to require your full attention. Not too easy, not too hard. The precise edge of your current capability. In those moments, the self disappears. The internal narrator, the voice that keeps asking, is this enough? Am I enough? Does any of this matter? Goes quiet. And people consistently describe those moments as the closest they've ever felt to meaning. But here's the problem with modern life. The structures we've built, the optimization, the efficiency, the constant stimulation, actively prevent flow. Your phone interrupts you every 11 minutes on average, according to researchers at the University of California, Irvine. You cannot reach flow in 11 minutes. Flow requires a minimum of 15 to 20 minutes of uninterrupted focus just to begin. Which means most people in 2025 are living in a state of perpetual, almost focus, never quite shallow enough to rest, never quite deep enough to enter flow, stuck in the space between, where the meaning signal can never fully form. This is the mechanism nobody tells you about. And it's the reason that gratitude journals and 5-year plans and meditation apps don't fix the feeling. They're all operating at the wrong level. The problem isn't your attitude toward your life. It's the architecture of how you're living it. In 2010, a Harvard psychologist named Matthew Killingsworth built an app. It was called Track Your Happiness. The app pinged people at random moments during the day and asked them 2 questions. What are you doing right now? And is your mind on what you're doing, or is it somewhere else? Over time, Killingsworth collected data from over 15,000 people across 80 countries. The result was one of the most replicated findings in modern psychology. People's minds were wandering 47% of the time. Nearly half of every waking hour, the people in this study were not present to what they were actually doing. And here is the finding that matters. A wandering mind was a reliable predictor of unhappiness, regardless of what the person was doing, not what they were doing, whether they were present to it. People who were doing something unpleasant but were fully present reported feeling better than people doing something enjoyable while mentally elsewhere. Presence mattered more than circumstance. This is the inversion that most self-help content misses entirely. You've been trying to change what you're doing. The data says the problem is where you are while you're doing it. And this is where it connects back to Viktor Frankl. Frankl didn't find meaning in Auschwitz because he was doing meaningful work. He found it because he was completely present to a specific reason, a specific person, a specific purpose that existed beyond his own suffering. Presence, anchored to something outside the self. That's the structure. Not achievement, not happiness, not the arrival. In 2023, a follow-up study published in the journal Nature Human Behavior tracked 391 participants over 6 months. The study found that people who reported the highest sense of meaning in their lives had one specific thing in common: not religion, not relationships, not success. They had frequent moments of what researchers called self-transcendence, brief periods where their attention moved completely outside of their own internal narrative. Watching a sunset without photographing it, helping someone without telling anyone, being in a conversation where they forgot to perform. The average duration of these moments was 4 minutes. 4 minutes of genuine self-transcendence per day was enough to shift meaning levels across 6 months. Not hours of meditation, not years of therapy. 4 minutes where you stopped being the main character, you followed the plan. That's what we said at the beginning. And the plan wasn't wrong. It just aimed at the wrong thing. Here's what the research actually points to. Meaning is not a destination. It's not a feeling you unlock when you've done enough. It's closer to a practice and a specific kind of attention. The brain you're living in is optimized to chase, not to arrive. Hedonic adaptation will pull you back to baseline after every achievement. The dopamine system will always move the goalpost. None of that is a character flaw. It's a biological reality. But within that reality, there are gaps. Flow states, when you're fully absorbed in something exactly difficult enough. Moments of presence, when you're genuinely inside the experience instead of narrating it. Instances of self-transcendence, when your attention moves outside of your own story for 4 minutes. These are not aspirational. They're neurologically distinct states that have measurable effects on how meaning registers in the human brain. Viktor Frankl wrote, "From inside one of the worst conditions a human being can experience, that the last of human freedoms is the freedom to choose your attitude toward any given circumstance." That's not a motivational quote. It's a specific psychological claim about where the control actually is, not in what happens to you, not in what you achieve, in where you place your attention. You've been doing everything right. The problem was never your execution, it was the map. Now you have a different one. If you want the evidence without the noise, the psychology research that actually holds up, explained the way it makes sense for your real life, subscribe.